Today we're going to be learning Yoma Daf Yud Aleph. Today's daf is sponsored by Shana Lowell for the refuah of Babi Shachat Shena Rachel Bat Rivka. Babi is an artist, loving mother, grandmother, aunt, and friend. She's both loyal and giving and has always been supportive of women's learning. And for Shlema for Noach Avram Ben Bat Yashana. Okay, we had yesterday a machloket about Lishkat Paradrin. Today is mainly going to be about mezuzah. Which situations are you obligated in mezuzah? Which are you not? We're going to see some connection to some sugyot we saw in Eruvin before. There's pictures today, so make sure to look at the pictures. They're very helpful. We saw a big machloket about the Lishkat Paradrin. Everyone agreed it needed a mezuzah. The question was, Tanakama said it needs a mezuzah by law. Rabbi Yehuda says it only needs a mezuzah because of a gezerah. Remember, we ended with that idea that they wouldn't think that the Kohen Gadol is imprisoned. So we want to make it look like a home. So we put a mezuzah on it. So now the Gemara says, I didn't find out more about the topic, but if anyone does, let me know. Man tana lahad tanu Rabbanan. So which Braita, which Tanaitic opinion was, which Tana wrote this Braita basically, or to which Tanaitic opinion can we attribute the following Braita? Right now, starting at the top of Yud Aleph, Kol ha'sharim shahayu sham lo haya lahem mezuzah. All the gates that were in the Beit HaMikdash didn't have a mezuzah. Chutz mi shar nikanor shelifnim mimenu lishkat paradrin. Okay, because here we don't really need to see this picture, but I may as well pull it up anyway. Here's a picture of Shar Nikanor. Okay, you can see in the picture here. Here's Shar Nikanor. Okay, it's this big golden gate on the entranceway into the Azara. Now, why there? Because further in from there was the Lishkat Paradrin. So if the Lishkat Paradrin needed a mezuzah, also the gate needed a mezuzah. So now they say, well, Lema Rabbanan velo Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore it must be only Rabbanan who required a mezuzah by law in the Lishkat Paradrin would then require a mezuzah on the gate. Whereas if you're Rabbi Yehuda and it's only because of Gzera, to Rabbi Yehuda, he guf Gzera. The whole idea of putting it on Lishkat Paradrin was Gzera, so they wouldn't think he's jailed. So you're going to put now you're going to do a Gzera on a Gzera. In other words, because we put it there, Mishum Gzera, now you're going to say, well, let's also put it on Shar Nikanor. So that's already a Gzera on a Gzera. So that must be, this Braita must be only according to the rabbis. Comes the Gemara and they reject this and say, no, afilu tema Rabbi Yehuda. Even, right, there's a very common structure. We saw this a few days ago, where first we say, maybe it's only one opinion. And then afilu tema means, even if you want to read that source, also according to the other opinion, to Rabbi Yehuda, you could say like this, Kula chad gzerahi. It's all one gzera. It's that you don't want him to look like he's in jail, people to think that. So therefore, we require a mezuzah. Where did the mezuzah go? Oh, the mezuzah goes not only on the door to the house, to the room, but also the door that leads to that room, which is Shar Nikanor. And therefore, you could actually say that this follows Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Okay, next, Tanu Rabbanan. Bish Arecha. We're now going to darsh in different parts of the famous pasuk, which talks about mezuzah in the Torah. Why is it famous? Because we say it in Shema every day. Uchtaftam, it should be written al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha, on the doorposts, right? The mezuzot of your house and your gates. So here you see it's not just houses, it's gates. That's where we got to Shar Nikanor, not just the house, but all of the room, but the gate. So now we're going to bring a Braita that darshans this word, Bisha'arecha. Now it could have said Bisha'archa, which would mean your gate. Put it Beitcha, your house, and Sha'archa, and your gate, the gate to your house. But it says Bisha'arecha, which in Hebrew means many gates. So from there, the Braita darshans explains, Echad sha'arei batim. So number one, it includes the gate to your house, which is obvious. Echad sha'arei chatzerot. Also the gate to a courtyard. Okay, there's a debate whether this only means a courtyard that leads to a house, or maybe just even a courtyard. If there's a gate to a courtyard and it's just a courtyard, maybe you would also need a mezuzah. Echad sha'arei medinot. Countries. It was a bit of a weird order because then it says Echad sha'arei ayarot. Ayara is a small city. So Medinot sounds like a big city, and Ayarot sounds like a small city, which makes the order a little bit strange. It should have been Ayarot Medinot because we're going from private to more public, more public, more. But anyway, we'll leave that question aside. Rashi explains, by the way, Medinot, if you look in the first line in Rashi, he says יש מדינה מוקפת, דיבור המתחיל אחד שערי מדינות, יש מדינה מוקפת הרים ויערים בכמה פרסאות, ואין יוצאים ממנה אלא דרך שערים. And he gives an example of a place that's like that. He said there's certain places they're surrounded, certain cities they're surrounded by mountains or forests where you can't get into the city only through that gate. Rashi says that's the kind of gate we're talking about that needs mezuzah. If there's all different ways to get into the city, and in addition, you have a gate, but that's not really the only way people get into the city, then you're not required to put a mezuzah there. That's Rashi's interpretation anyway. So now we say like this. All those things, yesh behen chovat mitzvah lamakom, meaning you have to put a mezuzah there. How do we get this? Mishum shenema, uchtavtam mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha, and your gates, plural. So this includes all these other type of gates also. Amar le Abaye le Rav Safra. So now we're going to have a discussion between Abaye and Rav Safra. Abaye says to Rav Safra, Hane avule de Mechoza, my time alo avdu hu Rabbanim mezuzah. What about the gates of Mechoza? Why in the city of Mechoza, right? They look around. He says, hey, look. So Abaye says to Rav Safra, in the city of Mechoza, I don't see any mezuzahs on the entranceway, on the gates. And Rashi says, also an interesting thing that doesn't say so in the Gemara, but Rashi assumes, Abula de Mechoza, if you look in the third line in Rashi, Sharei Ir Sheshma Mechoza, fine, we knew that. It's a city, the city's name was Mechoza. V'havu Ruban Yisrael. The majority of people were Jews. This would imply that he's only asking the question because the majority of the inhabitants were Jews, in which case, what we're going to say is when you say the Shar Ha'ir, according to Rashi anyway, it would only be a city where the majority of the inhabitants were Jews. Not if the majority inhabitants were not Jews. Okay, then you wouldn't be obligated at all. And the question was asked about Mechoza because the majority of the inhabitants are Jews. Again, this is Rashi, and which means it's an interpretation. We don't see this in the text, but he assumes that's what we're talking about. And that's why I asked the question. So now, what's the answer? Rav Safra says, Amarlu, Hani chizuk la'aka de kube huda avide. These gates are not meant as entranceways. They're meant to strengthen the tower that's inside. There was a fortress. It's meant to strengthen the fortress. That's what it's there for, not as an entrance to the city. Meaning, then you don't need a mezuzah because that's not what its purpose is for. So Amarle, to which Abaye says to him, but that doesn't help us because but in the entrance to the fortress itself, you should require mezuzah, and there's no mezuzah there. It must be people sleep there. So I don't understand. So he says, right, right, I said people must sleep there. Here the Gemara says, okay, it sounds like it was some sort of jail fortress. It says, there's a guard who sleeps there. And because there's a guard who sleeps there, so it should have a mezuzah. So you want to say it's just there you want to say it's just there for the support for the fortress. But the fortress is there and there's people who sleep there, and therefore it itself should require a mezuzah. How do we know this? How do we know what? That a place that's not necessarily meant for living, but somebody does live there, is obligated to mezuzah. We're going to see that right now. If you have a shul where the chazan of the shul lives there, okay, or it could be, the shamish of the shul or something like that. Somebody lives in the shul. Then chayevet b'mezuzah. What do you see here, by the way? That a Beit Knesset is not obligated in mezuzah by law, only if somebody sleeps there, which was more common back then. Some places actually have that nowadays, but usually shul doesn't have anybody sleeping there, in which case, by law, it doesn't really need a mezuzah, right? We all have mezuzot in our shuls, but it seems here that by law, it doesn't require mezuzah. We're going to get back to it later today. So what does Abaye say? Abaye says, well, Elamar Abaye, the reason must be for a different reason here, because really the fortress needs a mezuzah. So why doesn't it have a mezuzah? In which case, also the gate of it doesn't have a mezuzah. Mipnei sakana, because it's dangerous. Even though the city was majority of Jews, there was danger of the Gentiles. What does Rashi explain? The danger is, look at Rashi again, mishum sakana, shelo yomar hamelech shafim asitem b'sha'arei iri. So that the head of the city doesn't say, you're doing magic here, witchcraft. They'll see you're putting written things up on the wall, that's going to look a little bit strange, and they're going to think you're putting some spell on them, and therefore they're going to do terrible things to us. Now, how do we know that there's an issue of sakana? We're going to bring another braita. Today we're full of braitot. We're going to bring another Tanaitic source that's going to show that there was an issue of danger. We're going to start off not connected, and soon it's going to connect. Titania. Mizuzat yachid nivdeket pa'amayim b'shavua. Now, shavua in the Gemara usually means not a week like we use shavua, but 7 years. So if you have an individual's mezuzah, needs to be checked twice every 7 years. Okay, this is a common halacha. You should always get your mezuzahs checked twice within 7 years. It comes from here. Vishel rabim, but if it belongs to community, then pa'amayim b'yovel, twice in every 50 years. Okay, why twice in every 50 years and not every 7 years? So some people say it's a big headache for the community, to bother the community, right? Your own house, so you're responsible for your own house. But the community, we don't want to burden them to do too many, right? They already have enough communal things to do. And right, we all know what it's like to get volunteers to do anything for the community. It's always quite a challenge. So they don't want to burden with more things. That's the most likely answer. Some people say, which is a bit of a strange answer, that because it's communal, people are aware, and if something's wrong with it, they'll notice, which is a little bit weird because mezuzah, you can't see, it's on the inside, and to know that there's an issue, you'd have to open it up and look inside. So it's a little bit strange, but maybe because there's so many people who see it, so they would know if there's an issue. Anyway, you could also say they're more public and they're outside, and there's more likely there's going to be damage to them or something, depending on what kind of, might not necessarily be outdoors, but anyway. They only have to be checked twice every 50 years. Now why did we bring this? We want to show that there's danger involved. So now we're going to see a story. V'amar Rabbi Yehuda, that same braita. Maseh ba'artavin echad. Okay, there's a debate what artavin is. Is artavin someone's name? Or is artavin a name of a job, like a plumber or a shoemaker, or, he was an artavin. That was his job. Shaya bodek mezuzot b'shuk ha'elyon shel tzipori, who happened to have been checking the mezuzahs in Tzipori. And what happened? Mitzao kasdol echad, a Roman general or a Roman officer, saw him. V'natal mimenu elef zuz, and he fined him 1,000 zuzim because he thought he was doing something witchcraft or something like that. And he fined him a lot of money. So here you see, now it's interesting, it's danger. It's not physical danger, it's financial danger, but that's also danger, right? To charge you so much money. It was obviously an issue of there being some sort of problem here. We're going to ask a question on this story, and this is a classic question one can ask in many situations. But doesn't Rabbi Elazar say that if you're on your way to do a mitzvah, we're going to see the sugya in Sukkah also, you're on your way to do a mitzvah, you never get, nothing happens to you, God protects you. You're protected. So here he was doing a mitzvah, he was checking the mezuzahs, and he was fine. So what happened to this concept of if you're on your way to do a mitzvah, God protects you? So here's an interesting answer, right? It's always a question because we have these concepts that God protects those who do this, that, and then we always have stories where that happened. They were doing a mitzvah and something happened to them and they did. So how do you explain this? Well, they say if it's likely, it's damage that's likely to come, right? Like Becky's saying of Acher. I was thinking about that also, where he sees the child going up to do Shiloh Haken, and because the father told him, and he's doing both mitzvot that you're supposed to get long life, and then he died, and that's what caused Acher to leave the religion. Anyway, here they say, this is different because this is very likely damage. It's a matter of what the probability of the danger. If you wouldn't go into a high danger situation and say, well, I'm doing a mitzvah, that'll protect me. That wouldn't be very smart, because when there's serious danger involved, then it's going to get you anyway, even if you're on your way to do a mitzvah. So it doesn't kind of protect you from everything. How do we know this? We're going to prove it from a pasuk. Dichtiv, Vayomer Shmuel, when God tells Shmuel to go and anoint David to be the new king, King David. And what did Shmuel say? Shmuel said, Shaul is going to kill me if he sees me go doing this, right? This is totally dangerous. Now, if Shluchei Mitzvah Ein Nizokim would apply, then God would have said that, right? He would have said, don't worry, I got your back. But instead, what is the answer? Vayomar Hashem, Eglat bakar tikach biyadecha, v'amarta l'zbach l'Hashem bati. Make it look like you're going to do a zevach, you're going to roast up some meat, do a sacrifice with Yishai, right, and his family, make it look like you're just going there for a friendly visit, okay? And not that you're going there to anoint David, and that will protect you, because then Shaul won't go kill you, because he'll think he won't realize what you're doing. So the fact that God says, yeah, you're right, there's danger and you better watch out for it and come up with a way to protect yourself, and this is also a good lesson, that even though you say shluchei mitzvah ein nizokin, you should take precautions, right? Don't do things that are super dangerous and say, oh, well, I'll be protected by God, but take precautions, and especially when there's a likelihood of there being a danger, which means that shluchei mitzvah ein nizokin, according to this Gemara, is only when it's an unlikely danger. Then that unlikely danger shouldn't get you when you're on your way to do a mitzvah. Obviously, we know situations where that happens anyway, so you have to. It doesn't totally resolve the question. Tani Rav Kahana Kamei to Rav Yehuda. Now we're going to have a long back and forth between Rav Kahana and Rav Yehuda. If you look, there's a chart on the page. We're going to bring 5 brightot. Okay, 5 brightot that we're going to have to rectify with Rav Yehuda and Rav Kahana. So Tani Rav Kahana Kamei to Rav Yehuda. So he brings a brighta. Rav Kahana brings a brighta in front of Rav Yehuda. Beit HaTeven. Now this is all about which places are obligated in mezuzah, and the main topic being storage houses. Places that are for storage of various things, whether it's animals or objects. Okay, we have a Beit HaTeven, that's for straw, Beit HaBakar for animals, Beit HaEtzim, which is for wood, and Beit HaOtzarot, which is for storing up all sorts of things. Ptulim, right, usually grains probably and things like that. Ptulim in a mezuzah. That makes sense. They're exempt from mezuzah because they're not places where people would be living. Yeah, but that's not what it says in this Braita. The Braita says there's one extra line here, which is very significant. Because the women are, we don't really know what this word means, ne'otot bahem. So we're going to have to see what that means. My ne'otot, what does this mean? So comes Rav Kahana as he's explaining this, and he says, rochatzot. In other words, all these places, storage houses, are exempt from mezuzah because women bathe in them. Because they bathe in them, they have a status like a bathroom or a shower room or any kind of room like that where we don't put up a mezuzah because people are naked there. It's not appropriate. It's not kavod to God because there's dirt there. When people bathe, there's dirt, right? It's not like your bedroom you might get dressed in. We still put up a mezuzah, but there we're going to talk about zuhama, like dirt and disgusting things, smells, odors. So that's why you don't put a mezuzah there. Which sounds like, according to Rav Kahana, and we're going to see, right, that if you have a regular Beit Otzal or Teven or all those places where the women don't bathe there, but it's purely used for storage, it sounds like you'd be obligated in a mezuzah, which is strange because you would have thought it's not a sleeping place, but yet you're obligated according to Rav Kahana. Rav Yehuda doesn't like this. Amarle Rav Yehuda, Tama derechotzot hastama chayavin, is you're trying to say it's only because they bathe there, which means that you think a regular Beit Otzal, which is what we just said, you'll be obligated in mezuzah. Well, if you want to say that, I'm going to throw a braita at you. The Hatanya, Refet Bakar, which sounds exactly like a Beit HaBakar, right? A place where animals are living. Pturam in a mezuzah. So how can you explain that, right? So comes Rav Yehuda and he says, I have a different way of explaining ne'otot. It's not because the women are bathing there. Elamai ne'otot mitkashtot. It's that the women are putting on their jewelry, putting on their makeup, they're getting dressed up there, okay? Not dressed with their clothing, but extra things. And not only am I going to explain ne'otot differently, but I'm also going to explain the wording differently. There it said they're exempt from mezuzah. The pshat was because they are ne'otot, which Rav Kahana said because they bathe there. That's why they're exempt. But he reads it differently. Hachi katana. Af al pi shanashim mikashtot behen pturim. Not because, even if you take the storage house is totally exempt from mezuzah against Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana thinks an average storage house that the women don't bathe in, obligated in mezuzah. I want you to get this very clear because we're going to go back and forth between the two of them. So you have to know who says what. Rav Kahana thinks basic storage house, you have to put up a mezuzah. Only if women bathe there, then you don't. Rav Yehuda says, no storage house needs a mezuzah. And even, he goes further the other way. Even if women put their jewelry on there and use it as if it has some sort of element like a house, still you don't have to put a mezuzah. Okay, so he's going to the other extreme. So now we're going to see the different opinions. So he says, right, I'm going to prove it from this Braita. This Braita says, right, refet bakar p'tura min mezuzah, and it doesn't say anything about the women. So obviously Rabbi Yehuda says, I must be right. So now we're going to see, right? So he says, Amalei Rav Kahana. So Rav Kahana says, no, I'll get back at you. I'll explain why I have a better interpretation. Shanashim mitkashtot behem p'turin. You want to say that when women dress up, in your whole opinion is, right, even if women dress up, that was how it is. You can go by numbers, right? There's Braita number 1, which says mipnei shanashim neotot, and then there's Braita number 2, which is just a plain refet bakar is exempt. To which Rav Yehuda said, look, you see, plain storage house exempt. So he says, you want to say shanashim kashtot behem p'turin, that that's what neotot is, even though the women dress up in them, they're still exempt. But I'm going to prove a third Braita that's going to go against what you say. Refet bakar p'tura min mezuzah. Okay, that so far says the same thing as the second Braita. Comes the second line. V'shehanashim mitkashtot b'chayevet b'mezuzah. But if the women dress up in there, in the barn, then they're obligated in mezuzah. So what could you possibly say to this? Elamayit lach lememar. Rav Yehuda, how can you possibly explain this Braita? The only way you can explain this Braita that I just proved to totally contradict what you say is to say, mitkashtot tenaihi. The only resolution that you could possibly say right now, because we have two sources that you said, one says they don't dress, right? Even if they dress up, you're not obligated. And this one says if they dress up there, you are obligated. The only way you can possibly explain the contradiction between Braita number 1 and Braita number 3 is to say it's a machloket Tanaim. It's a debate among Tanaim. So therefore, you brought a Braita to contradict me. I'll say the exact same thing. L'didinami stama tenaihi. You think you must agree that as machloket Tanaim, if a woman dresses up in a storehouse, is it obligated mezuzah or is it not? There's no way you could say otherwise, that there's no machloket Tanaim there. Even though you think that a regular storage house for sure is exempt. I think a regular storage house, there's a machloket Tanaim. So you brought a Tanaitic source to disagree with me. But I'll just say that source, refet bakar p'tura min mezuzah, is a different Tanaitic opinion. I think it's chayevet b'mezuzah, and I get that from the first Braita, again, that said storage houses are exempt because the women bathe there, meaning they're not going to be exempt if the women don't bathe there. So Rav Kahana basically says, I think that my issue is a machloket Tanaim. I side with the side that says you're obligated, but there are those who say otherwise, and that's why the Braita doesn't contradict, because again, when you have contradictory Braita, as long as you say they represent two different opinions, that's fine. So now, and he uses Rav Yehuda himself, in his opinion, to say, look, you must hold it to Tanaitic debate because this source contradicts you. So that your issue is a Tanaitic debate. I'm going to say my issue is a Tanaitic debate also. So now, and he's going to even prove that it's a Tanaitic debate from bringing the next source. Okay, this is source number 4, which we're going to bring right now to prove that Rav Kahana thinks it's a source of Tanaitic debate. Again, I just want to make it very clear. Rav Kahana thinks that any storage house is obligated in mezuzah unless women bathe there. So stam, a regular one, is obligated. However, he admits that there's a machloket Tanaim about it. Rav Yehuda thinks a storage house is not obligated in mezuzah, even if women dress up. But let's just take stam. Women dress up in there. Well, then there's a machloket Tanaim. But if nobody dresses up in there, for sure it's exempt according to Rav Yehuda, according to everybody. There's no machloket about that according to him. So now we're going to have to read this next source according to both interpretations. Ditanya. Beitecha, sorry, al mezuzot beitecha, and the mezuzot of your house. What do we darshan? Beitcha hamiyuchad lecha. It's a house that's special to you. Prat, this excludes lebeit hateven, lebeit bakar, lebeit haitzim, lebeit haotzarot. All the different types of storage houses. They're exempt from mezuzah. Shepturim in a mezuzah. They're exempt because it's not your house, so you're exempt. V'yesh mechayvim. Oh, you already see here. Here's the debate that Rav Kahana says. There's a Tanaitic debate. Are you obligated? You're not obligated. Be'emet amru, but they all say that Beit HaKisei, uBeit HaBorski, uBeit HaMarchatz, uBeit HaTfilah, v'shanashim neotot behem turim min mezuzah. Everyone agrees that a bathroom, a tanner's house, if you remember, we talked about where the tanner's workplace, remember it has terrible smell. So because it has a disgusting smell, and the Beit HaMarchatz where people bathed, and the Beit HaTfilah where there were mikvahs, and places, storage houses where the nashim ne'otot behem, where they bathed in a storage house, ptulim and a mezuzah, they're exempt from mezuzah. So Rav Kahana mitaretz l'tameh, Rav Yehuda mitaretz l'tameh. Each one is going to explain it according to his interpretation. So Rav Kahana is going to be much simpler, certainly in the beginning. Rav Kahana mitaretz l'tameh, beitecha, beitcha miyuchad lecha, prat lebeda tevenu lebeda bakar lebeda etzim lebeda otzarot sheptulim and amaser, bistam. He's going to say that case is a stam case, where it says very simply, you have a storage house, not where women are bathing. Some people say you're exempt. Some people say you're obligated. That's exactly Rav Kahana. He thinks you're obligated, but he does agree that there's a Tanaitic debate about it, and that's what this source shows. Right? So they're ptulim or chayavim. There's debate. Now we're going to have a bit of a problem though with this last line. This anashim neotot behem my neotot lo chatzot ptulim and amaser. Right? Neotot means a storage house where a woman bathes. That's Rav Kahana. But what's the problem? If it's trying to tell you a storage house where a woman bathes, it's the exact same thing as a bathhouse. You don't need to list it separately. Place where people bathe is the same thing as a bathhouse, which is a place where people bathe. So why would you need to mention both of them separately? Ashmeina merchatz dirabim, v'ashmeina merchatz yachid. We want to teach you a merchatz of an individual and a merchatz of public. There's a difference between them. And that's both of them, you're exempt from mezuzah. But salkadat hachamina merchatz dirabim de nafish zuame. Of a merchatz yachid de lo nafish zuame emelichai b'mezuzah kamashmanan. The reason they had to list it separately was because if one woman bathes somewhere, it doesn't get full of dirt and disgusting and smelly. It's only when a lot of people bathe there that you have a lot of dirt. So maybe only beit merchatz, but not an individual place of bathing, which is why they have to tell you no, even an individual place of bathing wouldn't need mezuzah. Okay, so that we explain now according to Rav Yehuda. According to Rav Kahana. Now we're moving on to Rav Yehuda. The Rav Yehuda mitaretz l'tameh hachi katani beitecha beitcha miyuchad lecha. Now, the problem with him, remember, is he thinks nobody disagrees about a storage house. It for sure doesn't need a mezuzah. And in this source, it says there's a debate. So, prat lebeda tevenu lebeda bakar lebeda etzim lebeda otzarot sheptulim min mezuzah. They're exempt. Now, v'yeshem v'chayvim. So, how are we going to explain it? He did say there was a Tanaitic debate. In which case, if women dress up in there. So, afilu mitkashtot. He has to add the words. They're referring to a case where even if women dress up in there, you're exempt. And yesh mechayvim b'mitkashtot, and there are those who obligate. Which case do they obligate? If they're dressing up. Aval stam, but if it's stam, divrei hakol patur. But if it's just a regular storage house, everyone's going to agree that you're exempt. And then be'emet amru be'eda kisei u'be'eda burski u'be'eda merchatz u'be'eda tefillah afal pi nashim. Remember, what did he say? Neotot is afal pi nashim mitkashtot b'hem. Again, even if the women dress up in there, not sheha nashim, but even if they dress up in a beit marchatz or in any of these rooms, ptulim min mezuzah mishum de nafish zuame, because they're disgusting places. Then the nashim ne'otot behem is actually referring to the list of all the bathhouses and all that, and it's coming to say even if women get dressed in there, which they probably did, it's still not considered a house where you would even though it has some element of a home to it. You don't put up a mezuzah because of all the dirt and disgusting things that are there. Ula Rav Yehuda. Now we're going to ask another question on Rav Yehuda, and this is the last braita we're going to bring in this section. And we're going to bring a braita that really contradicts Rav Yehuda. Okay, it's a long braita, but already in the first line, you're going to see the contradiction. The rest of it really doesn't have to do with the contradiction to Rav Yehuda. It's just brought because they bring the whole braita. And we're going to learn all sorts about the halachot about mezuzah. Ula Rav Yehuda stama divrei hakol patur. He really thinks that a basic average storage house is exempt according to everybody. How could you possibly say that? Vahatanya b'sha'arecha, again in your gates, which is plural. We saw this before. Echad sha'arei batim, houses. Echad sha'arei chatzerot. Echad sha'arei medinot, right? Courtyards, countries. Echad sha'arei ayarot, cities or villages. Birefet, a barn. Lulim, a chicken coop. Madbein, a place where they would make the hay or storage house for hay. V'otzrot yayin, v'otzrot shemen, and storage houses for wine and oil. All those chayavim b'mezuzah. Now here you see, he said everyone agrees they're not obligated in mezuzah, and here it says they're obligated in mezuzah. So that clearly contradicts his opinion. Now we're going to, like I said, that's already the contradiction, but now we're going to move on in the Braita. Yachol shani marbe af beit sharach sadru merpeset. Remember all this from Eruvin, right? I might include a gate that opens up into like the guard's booth, or in Achsadra, a portico, or a merpeset, or some sort of porch. You would have thought maybe they're also obligated. Talmud Lomar bayit. Nobody lives in these places, and therefore you're not obligated. You might have thought maybe I'll include those places. Talmud Lomar bayit. Ma bayit hasoy lekavod. Av kol hasoy lekavod. A house is meant to be a respectful place. These places are not places of respect, okay, and therefore no. Here we finally get back to our topic. What's our topic? We were talking about Harabayit and the Azarot and all that. Even the Temple Mount, and the rooms in the temple, and the Azarot, and the big courtyards there. Talmud Lomar bayit, ma bayit shu chol, af kol shu chol, yatsu elu shehem kodesh. What do we learn here? A bayit is a regular place, not a sanctified place. So therefore, it's only going to be unsanctified areas, not sanctified areas. So therefore, we're going to exclude the temple. This is interesting just in terms of what this whole sugya of mezuzah is doing here. And I think it's getting at, what do we call the temple in Hebrew? It's called a Beit HaMikdash. It's a bayit. It's a type of house. So here we're trying to define what's the difference between different types of houses. How is the house of God? We talked yesterday, 2 days ago, about that the Shechina was no longer in the second temple, and it's a dwelling place for God. How do we compare a dwelling place for God to a dwelling place for people, right? Is it the same? Is it different? And so here we have a comparison. We're trying to figure out what's obligated mezuzah. Do people live there? It's not a place really for people to live. It's for God to live, but that's not people. And it's really like a comparison of this concept of what does exactly mean, which I think is a concept that we struggle with. What does it mean a house for God? So I think they're comparing it to a house for us to kind of try to think about what is a house for God. So again, I'll give you food for thought for the day. That was this diyun between Rav Kahana and Rav Yehuda. Again, just to summarize, Rav Kahana thinks that a regular storage house needs a mezuzah, although he admits that this is a machloket tanaim about it, whether it needs or not. And Rav Yehuda thinks that everyone agrees that no storage houses need mezuzahs, even if women are getting themselves dressed up there. And when it comes to women dressing up, well, it's true, there is one opinion that holds that way, Tanaitic opinion, he just doesn't hold by that. Tani Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda kamei de Rav. So now Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda brings a braita in front of Rav. Shisha sha'arim p'turim in a mezuzah. There's 6 cases of gates that are p'turim in a mezuzah. Beit HaTeven, a storage house for hay. Beit HaBakar, for animals. Beit HaItzim, for wood. Beit HaOtzarot, for grains and other things. Vishar Hamadi, which we'll talk about what that is in a minute. Vishar she'eno mekure, and a gate that doesn't have a ceiling. Vishar she'eno gavoa asara, and a gate that's not 10 tvachim high. This is going to bring us back to our Eruvin days, remember? And Shabbat, in order for something to be considered a gate, it needs to be 4 tvachim wide, 10 tvachim high. If it doesn't have 10 tvachim of height, that's not considered a gate that needs a mezuzah. So the first reaction of Rava is, Amar le, patachta b'shisha v'salachta b'shiva. Quit. You said you were going to list 6 sha'arim that aren't obligated mezuzah, but you actually listed 7. If you counted them, there's 7. So Amar le, he answers him. Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda says, Shar Hamadi Tinai. It's a machloket tanaim about the Shar Hamadi. How so? How do we know this? Tanya, I'm going to bring up the pictures now. This is very important. This is a sugya we've seen before. Okay, here, by the way, is a picture. I didn't go through all the pictures, but there's the Shar of Mechoza. Here, there's a picture where there's the fortress at the top. The way they picture it is there's this fortress above it, and it's this Beit Sha'ar for that. Okay, here's a Beit Sha'ar, just a picture of what we saw before, an Achsadra portico. Okay, we have a Merpeset. Okay. Then we have a Sha'ar that doesn't have a roof, a ceiling over it. Okay, that wouldn't need a mezuzah. Okay, sorry, I didn't show all the pictures before. Okay, now we're going to talk about this. This is what this picture is a kippah. Okay, a kippah is, right, it's square at the bottom, like a rectangular, and then it rounds off at the top, an arch, what we would call. So now we're going to say the following. Kippah. Rabbi Meir machayev b'mezuzah v'chachamim potrin. He says the Shar Hamadi, which is exactly this, with a kippah, right, rounded at the top, an arched gate, is a machloket between Rabbi Meir and Chachamim. Now, We're going to explain though. Vishavin she'im yesh beragla asara shechayevet b'mezuzah. The pictures are very helpful here. If for the bottom, okay, the width here at the bottom is 4 tvachim. We don't really talk about that. But if there's a width of 4 tvachim and it goes up in a rectangular shape all the way up, it could be square also if it's wider than 4. But as long as it goes up and the whole space within 10 tvachim of the ground is rectangular and it only rounds off above that, as you see in the picture, then we're going to say, shechayevet b'mezuzah. Everyone's going to agree you're obligated mezuzah because 10 by 4 is your minimum wall. That we've learned about a lot in Eruvin. That's your minimum wall. Amar Abaye, dekule alma. Now, Abaye is going to get a little more specific. Dekule alma gavoa asara ve'ein beragla shlosha lav klum. What does this mean? If within the 3 tvachim to the ground, now remember we've always talked about this 3 tvachim to the ground. I'm going to do this a lot in Sukkah again. Anything within 3 tvachim of the ground, we call it levud. It's as if it's attached to the ground. Okay, it's as if there's nothing really here. So if it's 4 tvachim wide, but only for the first 3 tvachim, and by the time you get to the top of the 3rd tefach from the ground, it's already rounded and it's already narrower than 4, then that's what it means. Ein beragla shlosha. The bottom part, the base, doesn't have more than 3 tvachim of height. Lav klumhi. So it could be that the height of your entire arch goes up to 10, but you don't even have 3 tvachim of height off the ground that are 4 tvachim wide. Everyone agrees, lav klumhu. You certainly don't need a mezuzah here. Inami, alternatively, okay, we're going to have the same kind of thing here. Yesh beragla shlosha. At the bottom, it's a very wide arch. So at the bottom, you do have 4 tvachim of width with a height of more than 3. However, eina gvoha asara. But the top of the arch doesn't even come to 10 tvachim height. So that also lav klum. Both those cases, no one's going to think you're obligated mezuzah because either you're missing the width or you're missing the height. However, in which case do they argue? Lo nechleku, we're now on picture number 14. Lo nechleku ela bigvoha asara v'yesh beragla shlosha ve'ein berochba arba'a. So what happens? It's a height of 10, but when it goes above 3, so you've still got up, if you have 3 full tvachim of height that are 4 tvachim of width before it starts to narrow, then it starts to narrow. So when you get to the top, you have 10, but at the top, you have 10 of height, but you don't have 4 tvachim of width, right? 4 handbreadths of width. So what do we say here? Theoretically, and that's what these dotted lines are. Theoretically, you could open the arch, you could break it, and if you broke it at the height of 10, what would you end up with? 4 width, if you were to break it. So we view it as if you can break it. So Rabbi Meir Savar Chokekin Lashlim, we basically view this, and we've seen this a bunch of times already in Shas, we basically view it as you can break it out, as imagine as if the whole thing is 4 tvachim wide. Since you already have at least a height of 3 or more with 4 tvachim of width, you can break out the rest. Imagine as if it is. And therefore you be chayav mezuzah. Rabbanan Savre and Chokekim Lashlim, they think that you don't. Okay, and therefore they don't allow this. Okay. Fine. That's a picture from Rashi. Here's another. Okay, we'll get to this picture later. Okay, now back to the Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan. So that was just an explanation of this machloket between them, and that was explaining what the Shar Hamadi is, and because it's a machloket, but whether we say chokekin lashlim, we imagine it as if it's 4 wide or not, in a very particular unique case that we would do that. Because it was a machloket, that didn't count in the list of the 6 that he mentioned, even though he did list it, but it wasn't counted. Tanu Rabbanan, Beit HaKnesset, uBeit HaIsha, uBeit HaShutafim, chayevet b'mezuzah. A shul, okay, now here it's interesting, we said a shul is an obligated mezuzah, so we'll get back to that. A house of a woman, okay, the way they're going to describe this is it's like a studio apartment, or it's a house that only one woman lives, just her. Ubeit HaShutafim, and a house of partners, meaning you share ownership of the apartment with someone, chayevet, or the house, chayevet b'mezuzah, you're obligated in mezuzah. So the Gemara says, pshita, why wouldn't you be? Okay, maybe the Beit Knesset isn't as pashut, the other ones for sure are pashut. It says it in the zachar, in male form. your house in a male form in the Hebrew language, right? There's male and female, feminine and masculine in the wording. Beitcha is masculine. Below beita, beitecha, your house in singular form. Below batehem, it doesn't say your house is plural. So you might have thought, therefore, kamashman. That's why they need to tell you no, it includes them anyway. That word was just a word they used. Now we're going to have to say, well, why they use that word, and why didn't they say batechem and batechen, and why didn't they say it in the feminine, and why didn't they say it in Rabin? So they say, maybe really the pasuk is supposed to be understood, the simple reading. And here's a great answer. The pasuk says, so that you will have long life. This appears right after the pasuk about the mezuzah. So that you will have long life. What? Hani b'aychai v'hani lo b'aychai? What? Men need long life and women don't? Individuals do and not partners? Of course, they all need life. Mezuzah gives you long life. Therefore, women are also, right? Women would also, if a woman owns a house, the mezuzah, she has to put the mezuzah up. Ela beitcha lamali. So why does it say beitcha in singular? What does it mean? Kedarava. Oh, by the way, it's not telling you who's obligated. It's telling you where to put the mezuzah. Al beitcha. Damarava derech biatcha. The way they darshan beitcha as biatcha, the way you walk into the house. How do you walk into the house? Right? So when you walk, you always walk with your right foot first. So your right foot is the one that's walking in the door first. As you go in the house, you put the mezuzah on the right-hand side on your way in. Tanidach, right? There's always a question with certain doors that someone could say. It's unclear whether it's an entrance to this one or an entrance, right? Which way is the entrance? You always have to debate how you put a mezuzah up. If you have some sort of open, area that's leading, right, where you could almost view it as an entrance area there and an entrance area there, then you would have a question. But obviously, a door to a house would be very clear. Tanya Idach, another bright. Not only is it a house for the purposes of mezuzah, it's also a house for the purposes of a bayit minuga, of whether this was just in the parsha about a house that would be leprous. Right? We have a lot of connections to the parsha, both last week and this coming week, all about Yom Kippur. Anyway, all these houses also could have a nega. The structure is going to be exactly the same. Pshita, isn't that obvious? It's a house. Why wouldn't it be susceptible to becoming a leprous house? Says, and he goes, the person who he has a house, singular, and it's masculine. Lo velola, lo velolahen. You might have thought he and not her, he and not them. Kamashmala, therefore comes to teach you, no, it's for all of them. Maybe you really should understand it, the simple reading. Amar krab beit eretz achuzatchem. It's any house that's in your land that you live in, and therefore it's going to be for everyone. Ela lo lamali. So why does it say him? Asher lo habayit. There's a great line, by the way. Misha miyached beitolo. Someone who makes their house only theirs. She'eino rotze lashil kelav. He doesn't want to lend out his stuff. Ve'omer she'ein lo. So your friend comes and you say, "Sorry, I don't have that. Oh, you want a bowl? You want some milk? I don't have any." Hakadosh Baruch Hu mefarsemo k'shemafanet beito prat l'mashil kelav acherim. So what happens? Well, let's leave those last words. You get punished. How do you get punished? You're going to have to take everything out of your house. One of the things they do when you're buying is menugah, before the Kohen comes into the house, you remove everything from the house so it doesn't become impure when the Kohen declares this is a leprous house. And when you take everything out of your house, everyone's going to see all your possessions and they're going to say, hey, you lied. You told me that you didn't have this. And now everyone's going to know. So it's a punishment for being stingy and lying and saying you don't have things because you don't want to share your house with other people. That's what they darsha from Asher lo habayit, who makes his house only his and doesn't open it to other people. So prat l'mashil kelav l'achirim, which comes to exclude someone who actually loans their stuff to other people. They won't get a leprous house. Again, this is trying to come up with what's the sin that one does that causes someone to have a leprous house. Okay, we'll end with this last contradiction. Beit knesset mi mitameh b'negaim. Is a beit knesset really mitameh b'negaim? And also back to our original, is a chayav and mezuzah. V'atanya, it says in a brayta, yachoyu batei knesiot u'batei midrashot mitamim b'negaim. You might have thought they are. Talmud lomar uvasher lo abayit. Misha miyuchad lo yatzu elu she'em miyuchadim lo. It has to be specific to someone. A beit knesset is not specific to anybody. So they answer lo kasha. They're going to give three possible answers. Either we say hara b'meir hara banan. Maybe it's a machloket tanaim. Is it considered a house? Is it not considered a house? Ditanya, as it says in the following brayta, if you have a house that someone lives in the shul, everyone agrees chayab b'mezuzah. But she'ein ba beit tira, there's a machloket. Before we saw no, but now we see there's a machloket about it, right? And here we saw that you are chayav in mezuzah, and that matches what we saw about 3 minutes ago, that you are chayav, because Rabbi Meir mechayev, chachamim potchim, there's a machloket. That's one way to read it. Alternatively, you could say hava harabanan, who exempt from mezuzah in a beit knesset. Below kasha, had ipa beitira, had lepa beitira. Maybe they're each talking about a different situation. A beit knesset that has someone living, or a beit knesset that doesn't have someone living. Last option, ibait ema, hava had lepa beitira, neither has a house where you live in. Hadik chachim, hadik kfarim. There's a difference between people who live in a village, a shul in a village, and a shul in a big city. The chachim is the big city. In a big city, and this is something also to think about, right? In a big city, people often don't feel connected to the shul as much as they have ownership over it, because it's in the big city. People jump from shul to shul. But in a town, a small town where there's one shul, of course, we know most small towns, once there's one shul, there's two shuls, there's three shuls, but there's more of a feeling of ownership of the people over the shul. And therefore, they're like shutafim, and they're obligated in mezuzah. Whereas in a big city where there's less of a feeling of this is ours and we have ownership over it, there's no obligation in mezuzah. So that's a very interesting distinction to make, and you can ponder that throughout the day. Have a good day, everybody.